What's new? What's fresh? What's new? What's new and fresh? Which DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince? I've had a really long day. Look, glasses. These glasses look orange. It's just gonna happen that way. What am I doing? I need eye makeup. I'll be right back. Okay, so I don't know a whole lot about lighting, but I know enough about lighting to know that this lighting sucks. The sun is setting and this is what you're getting. That rhymed. So I'll just reiterate for the people in the back of the room or the people who didn't hear me the first time around. People being terrible people online has absolutely no effect on whether or not your story was written or executed effectively. There's just too many moving parts to it. I mean, you've got the acting, the sound, the direction. There's too many ways that it can go wrong. Like every hit is a miracle. And I mean every single one. There's this alchemical, ridiculous process that has to happen for something to really make it big. But for genuine train wrecks like The Acolyte, it is possible to pick it apart, examine objectively what went wrong, and maybe change a few things and prove that it can be done better. How, you say? I'm so glad you asked, because I have a bunch of notes on it. Look, everyone is ignoring one of the greatest long-standing traditions in the Star Wars fandom, and that is saving the story in the edit. Not only have fan cuts been replete for decades now, but also the original Star Wars Episode 4 was saved in the cutting room by Marsha Lucas and Paul Hirsch. Let me turn down this gain. I don't know what's happening. What's going on? Is that what we're filming from? Where am I? My shirt is so white. I match this wall. The lighting is so bad. I really got to get this out. Okay. Specifically, Marsha's modifications to the story were core to Star Wars lore and provided a heightened sense of adventure and gravity. That team won an Oscar for what they did to that movie. We often forget that editors are storytellers too. So today I'm going to talk about Star Wars fan cuts, specifically one cut in particular that I had the honor and privilege to watch over the past few weeks while my life has been slowly dissolving and rebuilding itself. I will say I have been aware of Star Wars fan cuts actually since the early 2000s when George Lucas was remastering the originals and releasing the prequels. I don't even know. The prequels, for goodness sake. Clearly, I was distracted, okay? I was late to the whole internet forum scene party thing, and I simply do not possess the nerdrotic drive to commune with the Star Wars community. So, quick side note, I have always digested Star Wars as an arm of the Jim Henson universe. And so when they stopped using puppets and small people in full bodysuits and makeup and prosthetics, I sort of started liking it for other reasons. I started liking the prequels for his use of innovative technology. I always really adored Industrial Light and Magic for all of the cool, forward-thinking technological stuff that they had done, both to create the original ones and also animate over with computer animation. I thought that was really innovative at the time. Anyway, as a cinephile, I was quickly distracted by The Matrix and pretty much Heath Ledger's entire career. It kind of fell through the cracks for me, and since I wasn't too forum literate, I did not get online and try to watch any edits of Star Wars, even though I knew that they existed and I thought they sounded really cool. So most everybody here at this channel has found me due to my coverage of The Acolyte, and I swear to goodness I have more to say about film. This will probably be the last thing I say about it. The only reason I'm bringing it up to you is because I'm trying to point you to some other cool filmmakers that I ended up finding. In fact, some of them are fans that I met through this channel. The filmmaker that I'm going to be talking about today, who made a really great Acolyte fan edit, and that is Mark Jolie Corcoran. Also, do you know how long I had to practice that, Mark? My American mouth did not want to say those words altogether. He's a lecturer at the University of Montreal in Quebec, Canada, and just a very delightful guy and actually pretty talented. He teaches cinema and screenwriting over there at that university. When I found out that Mark had produced his cut of The Acolyte to use for actual academic purposes, I just couldn't be more excited to see it. So I had taken a whole day to chill, and I finally got around to watching the whole thing. I watched the entire thing in one day. I think he had cut it down to just about feature movie length, so I think it was about 2.5 hours. When I tell you, night and day, Mark pulled 85% of a good film out of that steaming pile of hot garbage. In the first 3 minutes, he had eliminated the cringe dialogue and tightened the pacing, bringing gravity back to Carrie-Anne Moss's character. He sucked me back into the story in the first 3 minutes. I was actually interested in May as a villain. Suddenly, I'm like, oh, what's he going to do? What is she going to do? How is he going to frame this? Because I kind of knew what was going to happen, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm intrigued to see what he does with this character. I wanted to know why they were fighting and where it was going to go. Is he going to go to a flashback next? What's going to happen? And honestly, that's exactly what that scene is supposed to do. It's supposed to give you some action up front, so that you can get engaged with the story. I mean, you find all kinds of pieces of character from that first scene. You get to set the vibe for the whole show. It's so essential. And cleaning that up was just really important. And I thought it was interesting that he went with the same opening scene when he could have chosen anything for the opening scene. So I think that was very telling about his choice to stick with the original edit on that opening scene, but clean it up and make it tight and actually make it interesting and riveting. I think he pulled it off. So flashbacks were still used, but this time he used them in a more traditional way, and they were only used to serve character and story. So there was no more incongruity for its own sake. There's no more preachy speeches that didn't serve the character or plot. There is not one single cringe piece of dialogue. It's like he clairvoyantly knew every single piece of dialogue that I would have taken out of the edit. And it's really interesting because cutting out all of the cringe dialogue and all of the strange conversations, here's the two things that taking out all of the cringe dialogue did for the story. Number one, the dialogue did feel a bit flat, but only because the sparkle of the original script, if you could call it sparkle, relied on inane, insufferable personality traits that aggravated more than entertain. So, good riddance. Number two, once the cringe was gone, I could relax into the story. I wasn't being pulled out every 5 minutes. I actually had space to contemplate the symbolism, the twins, the dark and light, the yin and yang, the relationship between Soul and the twins, the relationship between Osha and thirst trap Sith Lord guy, whatever his name was, sexy man in the pool of water. I hate remembering this thing. But when I watched it in the Corcoran Cut, took all of that out so that we could focus on the plot. And when I say the symbolism, I don't mean Mark's version of the symbolism. I mean, he actually tried to convey the symbolism that I feel like the directors were going for. And I'll get back to that in a second. The Corcoran Cut follows the character arc of Soul, and we experience the twins Osha and May through his perspective. What's masterful about this cut is that this shift of perspective actually heightens his fate as a well-intentioned villain. Osha and May feel more like externalized representations of Anakin's transition to Darth Vader. To be rooting for Soul's apparent kindness, only to witness his epic failure, to realize that ultimately his desire to save the girls and make Jedis only led to the creation of a Sith, beautiful. And might I add, I really feel like this edit was true to the story that Leslie Headland claimed that she was trying to tell. From this particular cut, you could get benign sexism can lead to evil, or you can also get sometimes doing the right thing can be the wrong thing to do, which I think is just not simply morally ambiguous, but a lot meatier than that. I think it's a lot more realistic than that. We all experience having the best intentions and having everything go wrong. And that's really what happens in the Acolyte to Soul, focusing on Soul and sort of using him as a fulcrum for all of the other things that happen in the show really helps the viewer to identify with Soul and feel that deep guilt and feel that deep failure. And then also watch a Sith Lord emerge from that feeling justified. And it was so well done. It was time well spent, unlike the original. The original was just a waste of my time, and I've already given my evaluation of that, so I'll let you go back and watch those other videos. But if you're interested at all in the plot line of this show, if you were interested in seeing A Tale About the Rise of a Sith. It was a great story. It was the story that I wanted to see. A great editor will understand it's their duty to be sure the final cut reflects what the director has set out to do, synthesizing performance and pacing, music and action to evoke in the audience what the director intended with only the sources they're given. For example, in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, Marcia Lucas added odd footage to scrap together scenes that implied people feared for their lives if Luke didn't destroy the Death Star. This was a detail that heightened the stakes, a fantastic plot device George Lucas hadn't thought of. In the Corcoran Cut of The Acolyte, Mark's editing made Stenberg's stoic performance read as emotionally repressed and stunted rather than blank and vacant. A good editor can do a lot to fix a bad performance, and hey, maybe she gave a good performance, or at least a better performance, and the script and the editing failed her. All I know is that when Mark went in and did his magic, all of a sudden the performance was a heck of a lot better. And this is part of what frustrates me so much about actors, complaining about their show being bad or complaining about people complaining about their performance. If they feel like they gave a good performance, they just have to take it on the chin, because sometimes you do give a good performance and sometimes the editing is crap, or sometimes the direction is crap, and sometimes the synergy just isn't there. Everyone's a storyteller in the filmmaking process. Everything works together. The less cohesion that there is in a story, the worse the story's going to be. Now, is the Corcoran Cut perfect? No. There's some holes in the story where he simply just doesn't have the footage. That was one of the advantages that Marcia Lucas had. She could pull from B footage that she had access to. But I do believe that they had to sort of slightly rewrite or reshoot the lightsaber scene between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, because they decided that, spoiler alert, they were going to kill Obi-Wan Kenobi in that fight. She did put that to the director, and they decided to go with it, and so they went back and they shot more footage. That's something that fan editors do not have access to. They don't have the privilege of being able to do that. So that's part of what makes this cut, it's not perfect. And, just because an editor is competent doesn't mean that they're always going to make a movie that's, going to fit your taste. I mean, not everyone is a Björk fan. I mean, they're wrong, but, I highly recommend that you follow the instructions in the description below so that you can get a hold of this cut. It's free to watch, and I really recommend that you spend some time to watch it if you're interested. Now that I've gone on and on about his Star Wars creation, a little information about Mark. Mark is a legit filmmaker. He's made 2 feature films, 1 fiction and 1 documentary. He also did a fan edit of The Mandalorian Season 1, and he was under the pseudonym Mathis Mando. So if you hang out in those communities, you can look him up, Mathis Mando. If you live in Canada, lucky you. You can possibly get access to the documentary that he made, which is called May the Fan Be With You. I was fortunate enough to watch the screener with English subtitles. This documentary follows several months in the lives of Star Wars cosplayers and collectors in Quebec, and it was a beautiful view into the hearts of Gen X Star Wars fans. By the end, I felt like these guys could have been my best friends. It was just such a joyful experience to watch them talk about why Star Wars was so important to them and how they got hooked on it and what their lives are like as collectors and cosplayers, what their married lives are like. It was mostly men, and it was especially wonderful to watch them bond with each other over this really great set of stories and have them talk about all of their adventures and their little dramas interacting together as fans of Star Wars. It was just very endearing, and it was well made. And I do highly recommend that you see it if you're in Canada. If you're not in Canada and you at least want to get a little flavor of what it's like, you can go to the link in the description below, and that'll take you to the trailer. And Mark Jolie Corcoran is just a busy little bee. He's going to be at the Quebec Comic Con this weekend. I believe on Saturday he's going to be presenting on fan editing, and I wish that I could go attend his lecture. That would be so interesting. That's right up my alley. So if you happen to be at the Quebec Comic Con on Saturday the 12th, please go and check him out. Let him know that you found out about him from my video. Tell him I said hi. I'm so excited to be connecting with all of you guys who love not only Star Wars and science fiction and fandoms, but also people who love film, true cinemaphiles like me. I do want to express some special thanks to Mark. He was totally patient and so cool and extremely generous with sharing all of these wonderful film projects he's working on. Mark, keep doing a great job. I hope your semesters go great coming up. I really wish you the best of luck over at Quebec Comic Con. And if any of you want to check him out, please do on all the things in the descriptions below. Like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And look, remember, all you writers and storytellers out there, we are the future. So all you have to do is just keep writing. Stick around. I'll see you next time.